3 days after burying my father, my husband walked into our kitchen, popped a bottle of vintage champagne, and announced he'd just handed in his resignation. He looked at me with a triumphant grin and said, "Pack your bags, babe. We're multimillionaires now. No more working for either of us." He had already test-driven a $200,000 sports car and picked out an 8-bedroom mansion in Aspen. In his mind, my father's $60 million estate was his golden ticket to an early retirement. But what he didn't know was that my father hadn't trusted him for years. And sitting in my briefcase, right beside the kitchen counter, was a newly certified copy of the actual will. My husband thought he was celebrating a lifetime of luxury. In reality, he had just quit a 6-figure job to walk directly into the most calculated financial trap of his life. Welcome to BT Revenge Tales, where calculated betrayals meet undeniable truth and ultimate justice. My name is Claire, I'm 34 years old, and for the past 8 years, I built a quiet, grounded career as an architectural designer. My father, Arthur Vance, was a self-made logistics giant who built a $60 million empire from nothing. He passed away 4 days ago after a sudden heart attack, leaving a void in my chest that felt impossible to bear. Yet while I was still folding the black mourning dress from his funeral, my husband Marcus walked through our front door with a smug, triumphant grin plastered across his face. He tossed his corporate laptop bag straight into the recycling bin, pulled out a bottle of Dom Perignon, and let the cork shatter against our kitchen ceiling. He hadn't asked how I was holding up. He hadn't shed a single tear since the burial. Instead, he leaned against the counter, crossed his arms, and announced that he had officially walked out on a senior director position at his investment firm. When I stared at him in disbelief, he simply scoffed, telling me that only suckers work for a salary when $60 million is waiting to hit their bank account. Instead of confronting his delusion right there, I kept my face blank, nodded quietly, and waited until he passed out from the champagne. The moment his heavy snoring filled the master bedroom, I took his tablet from the nightstand and slipped into my home office. What I found made my blood run cold. Marcus hadn't just quit his job, he had gone on an unchecked spending spree within hours of my father's heart stopping. He had drained our joint checking account to place non-refundable 5-figure deposits on an exotic Italian sports car, a chartered yacht for an upcoming trip to Monaco, and an exclusive country club membership. Diving deeper into his deleted emails, the betrayal cut even deeper. Marcus had been in secret talks with private wealth advisors for over 3 weeks, asking how quickly an estate could be liquidated once an elderly father-in-law passed. He had been counting down the days to my father's death. Methodically, without letting my hands shake, I exported every invoice, email, and fraudulent transfer onto an encrypted flash drive. The next evening, Marcus ordered expensive takeout and disappeared onto our back patio to make a phone call. The glass patio door was cracked open just an inch, and under the cover of the garden fountain, I listened to every single word. He was speaking with his mother and his ex-girlfriend on a 3-way speaker call, laughing with an arrogance that made my skin crawl. 5 years of playing the devoted, attentive son-in-law, Ma, Marcus bragged, swirling whiskey in a crystal glass. 5 years of listening to that old man's boring business stories. It finally paid off. His ex chimed in, asking about me. Marcus let out a cruel, dismissive laugh. Claire? She's naive and easily managed. She has no head for high-stakes finance. Once the estate settles, I'll take full control of the primary accounts, put her on a reasonable monthly allowance, and handle the real money myself. Standing in the dark shadows of the hallway, my final illusions shattered. Marcus had never loved me. Our marriage was nothing more than an elaborate, 5-year corporate takeover. By 9 o'clock the following morning, Marcus had already scheduled an urgent meeting at the downtown law offices of Harrison and Finch. He marched into the glass-walled high-rise looking like a man who owned the entire skyline, sporting a brand-new tailored charcoal suit and a gold watch he couldn't afford. When we entered the boardroom, Mr. Harrison, my father's lifelong estate attorney, was already waiting at the head of the mahogany conference table. The older man looked worn and solemn, carrying a thick manila envelope sealed with red wax. Marcus didn't even offer condolences or a polite handshake. He dropped into a leather executive chair, tapped his manicured fingers on the table, and said, "Let's skip the boilerplate formalities, Harold. We all know why we're here. Arthur's gone. Claire and I are his sole heirs. So let's get the fund transfers and executive trusts moving." Mr. Harrison looked up over his half-moon reading glasses, his expression turning to pure ice. Slowly breaking the wax seal on the final testament, he replied, "I assure you, Mr. Sterling, nothing about this estate will be simple for you." Mr. Harrison opened the thick legal document and began reading with deliberate, steady precision. Every single asset, the $60 million logistics portfolio, the commercial real estate, the private investment accounts, and the family estates, was placed into an ironclad, irrevocable generational trust. Under the terms updated 6 months prior, the trust was established exclusively in my name, guarded by a strict prenuptial reaffirmation clause that permanently barred any spouse from claiming a single penny, even in marital dissolution. Then Mr. Harrison turned directly to Marcus and read the final personal clause. Arthur had left his son-in-law exactly one specific item, an old, tarnished brass pocket watch. Attached to it was a handwritten engraving from my father, a reminder that true respect is earned through your own sweat, not inherited from another man's grave. The color drained from Marcus's face until he turned ghost white. He slammed his fists onto the table, knocking his chair back, shouting that the document was invalid, that he had quit his senior job, and that he was legally entitled to marital compensation. Mr. Harrison simply stared, completely unmoved. Before Marcus could finish his breathless tirade, I reached into my bag and slid a crisp legal folder across the table. Inside were formal divorce papers, complete with forensic copies of his unauthorized credit line withdrawals and reckless deposits. "You're not getting a dime from this estate, Marcus," I said calmly. "And by tonight, your belongings will be waiting in cardboard boxes on the curb." Panicking, Marcus stormed out of the high-rise and drove straight to his former corporate firm, begging his managing partner for his old director position back. But his reckless resignation had burned every bridge. His replacement had already signed an employment contract hours earlier. Within days, the consequences multiplied like falling dominoes. The exotic car dealerships and luxury brokers refused to refund his massive deposits, threatening legal action for his unpaid balances. His personal credit tanked overnight, leaving him drowning in over $100,000 of high-interest debt that he had accumulated in a single weekend of arrogant delusion. The golden life he had so arrogantly plotted had crumbled right before his eyes. Within 3 months, Marcus was forced to move back into his mother's basement, working low-paying, entry-level consulting gigs just to keep up with his mountain of personal debt. He sent dozens of desperate emails begging for reconciliation, but I never opened a single one. Instead, I used my father's foundation to fund grants for independent women architects and local trade schools, building something meaningful from the legacy he left behind. Sitting in my quiet home office on a bright Sunday morning, with the old brass pocket watch resting on my desk, I realized that true freedom isn't about the money you hold. It's about knowing your worth, standing your ground, and never letting anyone steal your future.